I'm Cicely and welcome to my channel. I am here today to talk about my Koch Scholar experience as well as give a few tips at the end. Every year I am approached by friends of my parents and my own friends with younger siblings who are seniors in high school about my experience as a Koch Scholar as well as the application and interview process. And since it has been well over 5 years since I applied, I figured that I would put out my experience before everything completely changes, because there have been a lot of changes over the years. So I will get started with sharing my experiences, and then at the very end I will share a few tips that I generally have given to those who have approached me before about interviews and applications. The reason I've been thinking about this a lot recently is because the Koch Scholar Leadership Summit is coming up for me very soon, and that is a kind of conference and networking event that is for Koch Scholars every about 5 years. And because that event is happening in October, really my experience as a Koch Scholar and the deadline is also approaching, so all of it has just been on my mind lately. The first thing that I want to talk about is my experience with Koch Scholar Weekend. What I remember the most about that weekend is just how accomplished everyone seemed. And I know it seems like, oh yeah, of course this is an award for accomplished high school students, but the level of it was just so much more than I even expected. Koch Scholar Weekend for me actually fell within that magical time period where I had been accepted into all of the schools that I had applied to, and then I hadn't yet decided which school I was going to. And it was actually the same weekend as the Yale Preview Weekend, so I just remember a lot of students who went to both. They would go to half one and half the other, and I just remember thinking that I could be going to school with all of these really amazing people. I would say for a lot of the activities and events, there was actually an interview portion that weekend. I don't think that they do the interviews anymore during the actual Scholars Weekend. I think they do all of that beforehand now, but that was a little bit stressful, but everything else was just so amazing. There was a moment that everybody stepped out on the stage for the main dinner, and honestly, I feel like it was most comparable to like the ESPYs or something, and that's an experience that a lot of high school seniors haven't and may actually never experience again. So overall, that weekend was just so amazing. I met so many people, some of whom I am still actually friends with in real life. From that time on, really even until now and definitely moving forward, the Koch Scholar Network has been such a big resource for me. I hadn't actually visited any of the schools that I got into beforehand because I didn't want to jinx myself, and that meant that I had very little experience with those campuses and their atmosphere and their culture before I had to make my choice. So of course I made a last minute trip to a bunch of different schools, and one way that the Koch Scholar Network was very beneficial to me was that at a few key schools I actually contacted the scholars that were undergrads there at the time and just asked if they had any advice, if they would meet with me, if they had any time to kind of talk with me about their experiences, how they liked it there, if they wish they'd made any different choices. And at every school just about someone said yes, if not multiple people, and that was just so eye-opening to me. I was so new to being a Koch Scholar at that point in time, and I was just so surprised about how open people were to just talking with me and sharing their experiences and helping me make my choices. So moving on to my next point, after all of that running around up and down the East Coast, I actually ended up going to my state school, but during Koch Scholars Weekend I had met someone from a neighboring state who actually lived only about an hour away from my hometown, and we immediately clicked. And I got to the middle of the summer and Koch Scholars will release really just who is going to what school so that people can know who's coming to their campus, so they're ready to welcome them. People in their scholar classes have a way to keep track of who's going to school with them. And I found out that the person that I had clicked with was actually going to the same university as me. I was thrilled, and that was actually one of the most important relationships that I maintained through college even until now. So in that relationship, we were friends for most of college, and at the point of junior year, he actually asked me to manage his campaign to run for student body president. So I did that. It was a successful campaign, and after he was chosen as student body president, he then asked me to be his chief of staff. And that was just one of the most amazing experiences for college. It is something that was very key to my resume for postgraduate internships and job applications. I don't think that that would have come to fruition if I hadn't come to campus with that established relationship with him, and it just lasted all throughout college. And even more importantly, it is one of those friendships that you know is going to be a lifelong friendship. So the last personal experience I really want to share is about the Leadership Summit, which I mentioned before that I will be attending very soon. I actually also attended the previous Leadership Summit when I was still in college, and it was so inspiring, and it's just a lot of fun. Koch Scholars are just fun. But one of the really key things for me when I was in college and attended the summit was I actually met someone who was working for my employer now, and she was so open to answering my questions. Even though she didn't work in the exact same area that I'm currently working in, she kind of shared her experiences, what it was like with the culture, and she was very open to answering my follow-up questions. And this was kind of just as I was deciding what I was interested in for after I left college. And I'm just so grateful that Koch Scholars has such a vast network of people who are all open to answering questions for people and for sharing their experiences and for just being a resource. And I just want to also be a resource within that network, but that's a big reason of why I wanted to come to YouTube and be a resource for people who don't necessarily have those networks in their schools, their hometowns, their personal networks, because I spend a lot of time on internet forums like College Confidential, just combing through those forums, scouring the threads to find out just the tiniest piece of information. And that brings me to the advice portion of this video. My first piece of advice is do not start a nonprofit if you don't already have an area of interest, something that you've been working on, something that's a real passion for you. And I know it gets more and more intimidating every year. It is insane what some of these people have done, but the Koch Scholar Foundation also looks very closely at just well-rounded students. Be your best self, and honestly, if you aren't passionate about something, they will know. If you put something out there that you started just to have a more impressive application, that will shine through and it will just feel so insincere. The second piece of advice kind of goes hand in hand, and it has to do with padding your resume. I don't know how many people have come to me with a resume full of just hours and hours and hours of volunteer hours and clubs and being the president of this and speaking at that, and there actually aren't enough hours in the day. there aren't enough hours. And so I just generally like to caution people to be very clear about what was a volunteer opportunity, what was reasonable, what was actually just something that was for personal gain. I should also mention that the summer before senior year or the beginning of the school year is not the time to add in a whole bunch of activities that you've never been involved with before just to kind of give your resume a little boost. My last piece of advice is to just know your stuff. If you have written in your application about being really passionate about something, then know about it. Know how it's affecting the world today. Know what's in the news. Know what's in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. If I'm interviewing someone about a topic I don't know much about personally, I'm going to look up, the news and other current affairs for that interest area. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you liked it, then comment down below about anything else you'd like me to talk about in the future. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the thumbs up down below. Bye!